So we're looking at these books just to kind of give you an overview of some of the things I said last week. Martin Luther said that these books were not accepted as canonical books, that we would not base any doctrine on it, but he did include them in his Bible. Most Protestant Bibles today do not include these books. Roman Catholics and Orthodox churches do include them. Interestingly, Jim gave me a Bible, his family Bible, from a Roman Catholic source, and there's even more books in there that I don't even know about.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious. I'm gonna kind of study that this week, and I'll give you some more information on that because it's new to me. Okay.
You're welcome to borrow and
Yeah.
go through it. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. After it just handed it to me, you know. One of the things that I find really enjoyable about Bible study is I'm learning. I keep learning, you know. And ask questions, interrupt. I don't mind that at all. I want feedback from you. Okay. So right now we've looked through all the accepted books. Okay, and these were books that scholars felt had some sort of value.
I'm late again, I know, but I'm out there selling stuff.
Yeah, we have a chair. Did you get a binder last week?
I did not.
Okay, there's more of them right here.
They're $1.98.
There, yeah.
Reasonable.
Gary's selling it to you for $1.98. I'll sell it to you for $1 plus shipping and handling.
Which is $1.98.
More than $1.
No, $19.95 shipping and handling. I know I'm off the subject sometimes, but I called one time one of these places that I wanted to buy one of them, and then you got a free second one,
Right.
and all you have to do is pay for the extra shipping and handling, and it was like $19.95 more for the shipping and handling. I said, I don't want the second one. And she said, well, you don't understand, sir, it's absolutely free. I said, no, it is not free. I have to pay $19.95 for it. Just send me the one. She said, we can't do that. I said, why can't you do that? We can't put it into the computer that way. You have to take two of them. I said, I want the free one. Just keep the free one. I'm sorry, so we can't keep the free one.
Oh, boy.
You know?
So the
So
guy on the street.
Cancel the order.
I didn't. I said, well then, I don't want it, you know. It's in our world today. I mean, we talk about grace as being God's riches, you know, freely given to us. But American society has a very funny idea what free is. There's always strings attached to it. Okay? We went out to buy a mattress, and it's a commercial you can hear on television, and you can get a free electric bed thing, okay? Absolutely free. But if you don't get that, they take $400 off the mattress. I said, well then I'm really paying $400 for that thing. No, it's free. I said, no, I couldn't convince the salesman, you know. Okay, so we have something freely given to us, the grace of God. So we've looked at all of these accepted books, and they're accepted by scholars because they have good historical value to them. Some of the books are not accepted because we know that historically they're not correct. They're like, let me ask you, how many of you, when you were growing up, learned that George Washington chopped down the cherry tree?
Oh, yeah.
Okay? I actually remember either in kindergarten or first grade doing a coloring sheet for George Washington's birthday, you know? And it's just a story that was passed around. And a lot of these unaccepted books were stories that were just passed around. So there's some things to learn from them, but they're not accepted today. So we're looking at, I guess you're about 3-4 pages in, and it's at the top it says Esther, which we already talked about. And this Esther is additions to the Old Testament book of Esther. Okay? And these were unaccepted as part of the canonical books. And then you'll see books not accepted. So I'm just going to read through that, okay? So the first one is the prayer of Manassas. This work dates from the 1st century BC. It was intended to be used in connection with the story of Manasseh's Babylonian captivity in 2 Chronicles 33. Parts of the prayer have found their way into the Protestant liturgy. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Okay. I see some of you kind of going, oh, what is that? You know what? I don't know. Don't ask me. But Jim, will you do me a favor? Jim, I'm going to make you kind of my secretary for today, okay? Will you send me an email and look up what part of the prayer of Manassas is in the Protestant liturgy? That will remind me, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
You need a notepad?
No, I can write it.
Apparently not.
I'm okay here.
Good. And then the Song of the Three Holy Children. This addition to the book of Daniel was written about 100 BC. So many, many years after Daniel was written, they added to it. Okay? It was first found inserted in this book in the 3rd chapter right after the 23rd verse. So it's not part of the original book of Daniel. And we know it's an addition. And you know, after hundreds of years, stories change. So that's one of the things we look for, things that date closest to the event. So we're always looking for that.
You said they. Who is the they that put it in?
We don't know.
Oh.
That's the other thing. We're always looking for who the author is, the date of authorship, who they're writing it to, when it first appeared, things like that. That's how we find out if it's a canonical book or a non-canonical book. So when Martin Luther looked at the book of Hebrews, we don't know who the author of the book of Hebrews is. So he said, I don't know if that should be part of the scriptures or not. And it appears kind of late in the writing of the New Testament. But there's some great things in it. So the church eventually said, no, we think that it fits in with the rest of the scriptures, so we're going to include that. But this whole idea about canonical, you know, there's so many people out there will say, well, the church is just trying to hide these books from the people. And you'll sometimes see the hidden books of the Bible. Well, those hidden books of the Bible were written 1,000 years after the crucifixion of Christ. And they were, we don't know the authorship of them, although they claim to be authored by people. But, you know, after 1,000 years, it's a story. It isn't.
So it's a biblical version of the National Enquirer.
It is, exactly that. It is, you know. There was a book, what was his name? Angels and Dragons was one of his other writings.
Dan Brown.
What?
Dan Brown.
Dan Brown. What was his first one?
The Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code. Look sometime, if you can get a copy, don't buy it.
Yeah.
But if you can get a copy of it, look at the foreword. This is an actual story based on historical facts that are fictionalized.
Say that again.
You know, it's kind of like, how can that be? And then how do you know what is fictionalized and what is historical?
Yeah.
You know, and so you really got to question that sort of thing. You know, so if someone writes a book today about Jesus, it's not going to be canonical because there's too much distance to it, and we don't know the authorship. So who were they? Many of these we don't know. They all of a sudden appeared. There are suspicions of who wrote them, but we're not sure. And a lot of them, they're not claimed. All of a sudden, they just kind of appear. Okay? It was probably a pastor who had a really good sermon on that, and someone said, I'm going to write that down and put it into his Bible, and then It got passed down. So be very careful that you don't do that to me, okay? You put one of my sermons in your Bible because...
I promise.
I have a closet full of them. What am I-
Yeah, what am I going to do with all those? Dick, they're worthless.
Me or the closet?
The next one, the history of Susanna. This is another 1st century BC addition to the book of Daniel. It is generally found prefixed to the book, so it was before it. The purpose of the story is to magnify Daniel's powers and judgment. So they kind of, they take Daniel and make him into a superhero, you know, that sort of thing.
Kind of like the Star Wars.
Kind of like that, yeah. Star Wars has a lot of...
Prequels. They call them prequels.
Yeah, the prequels to the Star Wars, yeah. But Star Wars also has a lot of theological undertones in it. You know, the Force is in everybody. You know, may the Force be with you. That's a theological undertone. First Esdras. This is a Greek version of, and in some parts a reconstruction of the canonical book of Ezra. So the Old Testament book of Ezra. It was written about 100 BC. Some of the subject matter added is from the book of Nehemiah. So somebody kind of took the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, put it together and made a fictionalized account of it. And then second Esdras, this book is an apocalypse. Apocalypse means talking about the end times. So the book of Revelation would be an apocalyptic writing. Okay? Especially chapters 3 through 14. It is a composite in origin, dating from 65 BC to 120 AD. That's the other thing, Bernice. If you can't date the book, it's very questionable. You know, we have some Greek texts that we can actually date almost to the year because of some of the references to it, and even the book of Maccabees. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. We're pretty sure that it was written pretty early on in the history of the Maccabean family because they don't refer to the Persian overtake before the Romans. So, and that happens like 69 years before the time of Christ. So it's written early on, and I'll talk about that in a minute, okay? The value of this book lies in the fact that it focuses heavily on the period of Jewish thought surrounding the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. So it's writing about something that's going to happen in the future, okay? The view it expresses on eschatology are closely aligned to the teachings of the New Testament. So there's some value to it, but, you know, it's not canonical, not accepted. Okay? Yeah.
The Left Behind series, I'm thinking in 100 years they might think, oh, that's...
Yeah.
There's some people today who accept some of those modern writings as truth.
Yeah, but they're not.
No. And you got to be so careful of that. I had a chart last week blown up of these maps, and I lost it. Okay, I'll try to find that for next week. Let's look at these. This, as we read through, this first one is just to give you an idea of what is going on. At the time, this is the time of the Maccabees. Okay? So you'll see up above, you'll see the Samaritan tribes, the Scythians, and then the Celtic tribes, the Gauls, all up here. I want you to notice, first of all, how small the Roman Empire is at this point. It is not a world power at this point.
Oh, red.
Yes, it's all this red. Okay? But the main area here is the Seleucid Empire. This is the Persians, all of in here. Okay? And they come all the way down, and if you follow it along the coast, they take in Israel there. Okay? The Ptolemaic Empire is what we would probably refer to as Egypt. Okay, now where do you get these names from? The Seleucid Empire, it's named after a family. The Ptolemies is the ruling family in Egypt at the time before Christ.
Aren't they derivatives of the Greek conquest, though?
I'm sorry, say that
Aren't they
again?
the derivatives of the Greek conquest? Like Alexander the Great and his four
Yes.
generals, and then those families.
And then those families kind of divide up,
Right.
and yeah, yeah.
So the Seleucids are from those one of the.
Well, it's many years later.
Okay.
Let's see, I have the date here. Alexander the Great was, he dies in 323 BC,
Okay.
and we're going to be talking here, the Seleucid Empire came in 312. Pretty close,
Okay.
pretty close. Yeah, I thought it was longer than that. It's a good pickup. And then you'll see all the Arabian tribes down here. This is just to give you an idea of what it was like during this time period. Okay? And the Seleucid Empire, they want everyone to be Hellenized. They want everyone to be Greek. Okay? So we're going to speak the Greek language. We're going to dress like the Greeks. We're going to worship like the Greeks. Everything like that. We're going to be one nation. And the way to do that is to make everybody homogeneous. So you're all going to look and sound alike. Now, what do you think that does to the Jews?
Not too happy about that.
They don't like that.
Yeah, not at all. Okay? And then this map, you might want to pull it out each week, because this is, as we talk about the Maccabean revolt, these are all the references we're going to see in that book. Okay? So this is just Israel at the time of Jesus. And you'll see Galilee up here. You'll see the Sea of Galilee. And then the Jordan River down. And you'll see the Salt Sea or the Dead Sea down at the bottom. Okay? And they're kind of divided up also into areas. And remember, Jesus is from the Galilean area. But look down here, you have Judea with Jerusalem. And in the middle, you see Samaria. Okay, now Samaritans are people who intermarried with this tribe up here. So they're half Jews. King Herod has some Samaritan blood in him. So he isn't well liked because of that, besides all the other things. Okay? So, at the time of Jesus, there was a big argument over where they should have the temple. And a true Jew would say, we have it in Jerusalem, but if you were a Samaritan, you couldn't come down to Jerusalem. They were, even though they still claimed to have Jewish roots, they weren't seen that way. And a good Jew would never walk through Samaria. That's the other side of the tracks for them. You just would not do that. So what would you, if you were a good Jew and you wanted to go from Galilee to Jerusalem, what would you do?
Cross the river.
You'd cross the river, walk down, and cross the river again. Why is that significant to know?
Well, the Samaritan and that story.
It takes a lot longer.
Well, about the Samaritans, because in that story about helping, it was a Samaritan that helped.
It shows their faith also.
What Samaritan who helped?
When the person was beat up on the side of the road, the Jews walked past, but the Samaritan helped and took him to the inn and paid for his medical attention.
Yeah, but that's just a story. Jesus, just used
But
a
Jesus
story.
said it.
That's right.
I'm pushing it a little bit.
Yeah.
There's something much more significant.
Jesus walked through there?
Jesus walked through
He
there.
did, yes.
And he stops at a well.
Yeah, I talked to the woman at the
Oh, a woman?
Yes, the unclean woman.
Walk through.
An unclean woman?
Yes.
There's something more. There's another oh.
She'd been married, had 5 husbands.
Yeah, he was alone. His disciples had gone in to eat. A man alone in the middle of the day talking with a wanted woman at a well.
Probably touched her.
who is a Samaritan. Yeah.
Is that where he said those without sin cast first?
No,
No.
no, that's
That's
another,
later on.
that's another prostitute.
This is where he said, I have the water.
Yeah, the living
and
water.
You'll thirst no more.
Yeah,
He said, you'll thirst no more.
you'll thirst no more. You drink of my water, you'll never thirst again. But I want you to see that because, you know, sometimes we try to put up barriers, and Jesus was tearing down every barrier. Because in those days, if you had any sort of illness, you were born with any sort of deformity, you were considered cursed by God. What did you do wrong?
Right.
You know? And Jesus seeks those people out. And he says, this is what I came for, to honor them, to build them up. So that is really significant for Jesus. Okay? And it's also so surprising to me that they're brothers and sisters and they can't get along with one another. So what's new, right? Okay. Now, I gave you this last week. Yours is not yellow. Yours is white because I just copied it. And I thought it was what I wanted to give you. You might just want to keep this for reference, okay? It shows you the rulers who are going to be significant during this time period, okay? So the Ptolemaic rulers are in Egypt. The Seleucid rulers are Syria. That's the ones who are taking over Jerusalem. And then all of these Jewish high priests, okay? Do you have that? Okay. And what's significant here is if you go down, if you go halfway down to the Jewish high priest, you'll see Jonathan Maccabees.
Yeah.
He takes over as high priest. Now, the reason that's very significant is because in those days, the high priest was chosen for life. He died in office. And his eldest son would take over. It was a family situation. You had to be a Levite. You had to be part of the priestly family. Now, when the Maccabean revolt starts, Mattathias, who is the father of the Maccabean family, okay, he is a Levite. He is a priest, but he's not high priest, okay? The high priest leaves and goes down to Egypt out of fear that he's going to be killed. And he actually sets up a second temple in Alexandria. And that's significant because by the time Jesus comes along, the greatest amount of Jews outside of Israel are living in Alexandria. Okay? So we suspect that when Jesus and Mary and Joseph flee, they probably go down to Alexandria. And there's lots of now Jewish writings in Greek in Alexandria, okay, which are very significant to us, okay, because we can use those now to find out more history, okay. So now the question is, these Maccabeans, they took over as high priests. They shouldn't be high priest, okay. So that high priesthood, and this is where I wanted to give it to you, but I messed up last week. I'm going to give you another sheet here. I wanted to show you the high priest and how it comes about.
What qualified someone to be a high priest as opposed to just a priest?
They had to be a descendant of Aaron and be part of the family. So Aaron was the first high priest by God's command. And yes, that can go right in there. Yeah. And then it was family related down from there. So you were born into it.
Okay. Like family business.
Yes. Now that changes. And that's why I wanted you to see this. But if you go down to, let's see, okay, wait a minute. This is the high priest from 200 BC. So if you go to number 6, Jonathan. Jonathan is Maccabean.
same one.
And then his brother Simon takes over. And then his brother John takes over. And then Aristobulus. So they make a family dynasty out of the high priesthood. Now, why is that significant? High priest is extremely wealthy. Okay? At the time of Jesus, the high priest took a cut of everything that was coming into the temple. Okay? And what they would do is, at the time of Jesus, you want to go to Jerusalem and you want to sacrifice. Okay? So I take my little lamb and I go to Jerusalem to sacrifice my little lamb for my sins, and the priest inspects it and says, oh, there's a spot there. You can't do that. And go over there. We have some good ones. You can pick out one of those, and guess who gets a cut of all that?
The priest. High priest.
The high priest. Okay?
What happened?
You go in, you want to give your tithe. Okay? You all gave a tithe this morning, right? To the church? Yeah, good. I wasn't very convinced. Okay? What if I said to you, oh, American dollars? That's filthy. No way. But I'll tell you what. You come see me. I'll give you Bauer bucks because they're accepted in the church. Okay?
I knew of a preacher in Tulsa back in the day.
Yeah.
He was a Southern Baptist. Anyway, they would collect the money, and he would stand in front, and he would count it, and if it wasn't enough, they would pass the plate again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's not uncommon.
Very
But what they were doing,
Very common.
very common.
Yeah.
What they were doing in those days was they were taking a cut of that,
Right.
okay, and cheating the people, okay? Now, Jesus goes in to the temple area, and they're selling these doves and these lambs and changing money, and what does he do?
Overturns the
He
table.
overturns the tables and says, you've made my house a house of robbers. Okay, so the priesthood is very, at the time of Jesus, early on, it's really a vocation. Okay, by this point, it's really become a dynasty. Yeah.
So what about Zechariah? Because he goes into the Holy of Holies, right, to offer prayers where the angel visits him. So can only the high priest go into the Holy of Holies, or?
The high priest can only go into the Holy of Holies one day a year,
Okay,
on Yom Kippur.
right. So then why was Zechariah allowed to go in there? If he was, because I don't see him on this list unless I missed him.
Zechariah, I believe, I think we're going to have to go back earlier.
Okay.
This starts 200 years before the time of Christ.
I was just looking at the high priest down like 1 BC or 1 AD. So like Eleazar.
Oh, no. You mean Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, no. He doesn't go into the Holy of Holies.
Okay.
He goes in, every day they went in and offered prayers at the altar of the incense.
Okay. So he wasn't in the inner.
No. And that was on a rotation basis.
Okay.
And he goes in to do that. And they're waiting for him to come out to give the benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you.
Oh, okay.
And he doesn't come out and he's silent. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no. He is a priest. He's not high priest.
Okay.
They also were not allowed the oil to run out, and did he have to have a rope on him to?
The high priest, they would put a rope around his leg in case he got into the Holy of Holies and he died.
Right.
So they could drag him out because nobody could go in for another year.
Oh, my word.
Okay? But the oil, no, that was, they had lamps that they kept burning all the time. And that was the Hanukkah, the perpetual flame. And there's some churches, have any of you grown up in a church that had a perpetual flame in it?
Yeah, we had.
Yeah.
Well, we used to have one in our sanctuary here.
Is
You
that the
did.
Lord of the red candle?
Yeah.
Okay. The Christ
Yeah.
or not the Christ candle.
No, it was a perpetual flame. It was it's supposed to symbolize the presence of God in that place.
Yeah.
Churches have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Catholic churches have them. We had it at Pilgrim.
We had it at our.
Yeah.
Where I grew up.
Yeah, I don't see the it's there's no reason you have to have it. I mean that's not it's tradition. But a lot of the newer churches are not putting it in. I don't know why.
Is that in any way connected to the eternal flame at Arlington?
No,
No.
none whatsoever. No. Okay, so you'll see that they take over, and then they come down, and it's not until 22, Eleazar is appointed by Herod.
Oops.
Okay?
Herod. You say there's several Herods.
Yeah,
Is
King
that
Herod.
like the first one?
Yes, King Herod the Great. Yeah. So now, well, I'm sorry, there's another one up here, 15. So at this point, even though they are still kind of family related, because they'd be upset if it wasn't some sort of family. Now it's no longer a lifetime position, and it's appointed by the government. By the king. Now the king is King Herod, who is a half Jew, who none of us like. And the high priest, we don't know if he's really the high priest or not. Okay? This all plays into what's going to go on in the life of Christ.
And that's at 22.
The first one is at 15. See that? It says appointed by Herod the Great.
Is that where it changes?
Yeah, that's where it changes.
So it's no longer Maccabean at that point?
It is, they're related to the Maccabean family,
Okay.
but when you get down to like Caiaphas,
Yeah.
where is he?
28.
28. Caiaphas is, Annas was at the time of, shortly after the time of Jesus' birth, okay, Ananias. He is the father of the patriarch, and these are his sons until you get down to Caiaphas. Caiaphas is his son-in-law.
Okay.
So they keep it in the family, but whenever they don't like something the high priest is doing, they change him. Okay? So that's how they kind of manipulate him.
What would happen if the high priest never had any sons?
I don't know if that ever happened.
Okay.
I would imagine it would probably be like a royal line, but I can't.
Or
What's
I
a
have-
son-in-law?
Or son-in-law, or yeah. It was somehow or another kept in the family. Yeah. Okay, so I wanted you to see that, how that kind of progresses. So this time period of the Maccabees are setting up what's going to happen during the time of Christ. Okay, now, I gave you another one, and it says the Hasmonean dynasty. The Hasmoneans are King Herod's family line. Okay? Oh, I'm sorry. Hasmoneans are King King Herod's family line. Okay? But it starts with the Maccabees. Okay? So the one who is going to lead the revolt in the book of Maccabees is Mattathias. He dies, and his son, Judas, wait a minute. No, I think it's Jonathan. Let's see.
He's the one that comes down.
Judas is first. We'll get to it. I'll take you through one by one, okay? Each one of them, okay, dies and then Simon he's the last one. He's the one who invites in the Romans, okay, with his son John, okay? But then if you keep going down, look at how this goes down, kind of go through, you see they're related also to King Herod. So the Maccabean family, who is related to the high priest, is also related to King Herod.
Got a lot of nepotism.
Yes, you got it. You got it. Okay, I'm going to give you one more, because I think it's sometimes unclear about this whole thing with King Herod, and you have King Herod the Great, who is at the time of Jesus. And how does King Herod become king? He goes to Rome because there is an Assyrian revolt going on. The Assyrians want to come in and take over the Holy Land, And he goes and he says, if I can raise an army and get rid of them, will you declare me king of the Jews? And the Roman Senate, I've never figured out why, it's the strangest thing, say, okay, Herod, if you can do that, you can be king of the Jews. And he goes back and he does it.
Probably because I didn't believe me.
And yeah, that might have been. So he becomes King Herod the Great, the king of the Jews. Okay? He still has to answer to the Romans. Okay? But King Herod it's just like he doesn't care. He's very paranoid. Very, very paranoid. Kills many of his children. I want to say it was Josephus who said it would be better to be one of King Herod's pigs than one of his sons. Because the Jew wouldn't kill a pig, but your son, okay, killed mother-in-laws and wives, and he was ruthless. Have you ever seen the movie Masada?
Yes.
Okay, Masada was built by King Herod as his fortress in case they tried to attack. He could go up there and live forever, and it was almost impenetrable. How long did it take the Romans to conquer it? Was it like 10 years? It was a huge amount of time for them to finally, that was the stronghold of Israel after the temple fell. And it took a huge amount of time. And he built that. He built Caesarea Maritime, which is right on the water. And I always thought growing up, I don't know why, I think because in the Bible you see these pictures and you think of the Holy Land as being so backwards, don't you? At the time of Jesus? Okay. King Herod, Caesarea Maritime, they had aqueducts that brought in water. He had an infinity pool into not Adriatic, Mediterranean Sea. It was magnificent. They had flush toilets in a sense. They had running water, and it just kind of flushed everything away. And they had anything we would have. They had ways of air conditioning and heating, and it was primitive in our terminology, but it was magnificent. Some of these things that they built, it was very significant. And this is kind of off the subject, so I'm not going to go into it too much today. But if you can go home, put in Caesarea Maritime. Now, some people say that different. I've heard it Maritima. I want to say it's Maritma.
It's on here, so I thought.
No. This is something totally different. This is one of King Herod's building projects on the sea. And why it's significant is Israel has no ports because it's all like sandy beaches, It's kind of how Galveston isn't a good example because you can come into the port. But if you wanted to have a port on Galveston Island, you couldn't do it. There'd be nowhere to harbor the ships. Okay? Well, they developed a cement that could harden underwater. And today, if you look at pictures, the area has been destroyed, the harbor is destroyed, but aerial shots show you where this harbor was. And it's magnificent. They built way out into the Mediterranean Sea so that these ships could come in there. And so he did magnificent things, King Herod. But he was also very paranoid. Very hated.
Can you just give a quick summary of the temple, because it's Herod's temple, but what is the connection to, is it Nehemiah, the second temple?
That was destroyed.
Okay, that one was destroyed as well.
Yes. Okay. So King Herod comes to power, and the story I've heard is he wanted to rebuild the temple, but he knew that the Romans wouldn't be very amenable to that.
Okay.
So he sent a courier to Rome saying, I'm rebuilding the temple. And he told the courier, take as much time as you can. Okay? The Courier gets to Rome, and Rome says, oh, don't build the temple again. And the Courier takes as much time as he can to get back to King Herod. King Herod writes a letter back to Rome saying, whoops, I'm sorry, it's done. Take your time getting back. The temple is done.
Okay.
Whoops!
So it's actually a third temple then?
Yes.
And then so during
So
the
you have-
Maccabees, whose temple were they?
That would be
Nehemiah's?
Nehemiah's.
Okay.
So you have Solomon's, Nehemiah, Second Temple. This would be King Herod's temple.
Okay.
But
Which is
that would be the first indication it's better to do it and ask for
Permission, then, yeah. Ask for forgiveness rather than permission, yeah.
Okay.
Then that temple is destroyed in 70 AD.
Okay.
And what we have left of that temple is the Wailing Wall,
Right. Okay.
where you'll see the Jewish people praying and wailing at. That's part of the original temple of King Herod,
Okay.
which was probably part of even King Solomon's temple,
Okay.
the Temple Mount. Now, you know why else the Temple Mount is sacred, right?
That's the site of Abraham
Abraham's tomb,
sacrificing Isaac.
sacrificing Isaac, his tomb. It's where,
Muslim. The Muslim.
who's the Muslim leader?
What's his name?
Muhammad?
Muhammad.
Yeah. Where he rose, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Something like that.
Okay.
it's sacred to them too,
Okay.
to the Muslims. So
Yeah.
it has significance all around.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's why I say when they rebuild the next temple, that's the end of the world.
Yeah. Be a big fight.
That will be, a world war to end all world wars. But I'm not a prophet, and I might not live that long.
What was that website, Maritime?
Well, just look up, if you go to like Google and then go to Caesarea Maritime and then put in images. Up at the top you'll see, it'll say images, and just press images and you'll have all sorts of images. Gordon, can you press images on your phone?
Well, I think it's, I'm looking at Herod, talking about the concrete underwater.
Oh, yeah.
All that, but we did this already in class, you gave us we did
I did.
something that was nice.
That was 2 years ago in the other classroom.
I'm fixated, I've seen it.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't think a lot of people were here at that point. Has
I
any?
was not here then.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember that.
But it's extremely significant for the time period. Okay. Now, let's go back to that chart, because King Herod the Great, okay, is not the Herod at the time of Jesus at death. He's at his birth, not his death. Okay.
Hey, I have a question before you do that.
Yeah.
I was just looking at this chart.
Yes.
We said that this was the
Oh, you're going
dynasty.
back?
I
We
was-
can't go back. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
It looks to me like Herod is not in this family line, he was just married into it.
He married
Yeah,
into
he
it.
married
Yeah.
So where did
Yeah.
this dude come from?
His father was a very significant general.
A general?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So how did he pop up? That's how he popped up from his family line.
So he married well.
He married well. Yeah. But it's all part of the family.
And he had 6 wives?
Yeah.
At what time?
No.
No, he kept
No.
killing them, didn't he?
Yeah. Got rid of them, divorced them. By the time John the Baptist comes along, no wonder, he's... Now, that's the other Herod, okay? And that Herod, Herod the Lesser, okay? Remember, John the Baptist is beheaded, and he's beheaded because he talks against King Herod. And he says, you married your sister.
Right.
Well, it was actually his sister-in-law. She was married to his brother, and she ran off and remarried the other brother. Okay? And you'll see that down here in the family line. I'm not going to go into this a lot, but I wanted you to have this available to you, okay? And you can see how then they divided up the area. Do you see, King Herod controlled all the area, and then he divided it up between his sons. And then finally, Herod Agrippa kind of took over most of it. And then his son got a little bit of land.
Is Agrippa the one Paul went before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can't remember. I want to say it's Agrippa the second, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
By the time,
Yeah, it
by,
says right here.
by the, oh, it says that? Okay.
It says under Agrippa, it says Paul makes a legal defense before
Oh,
him.
there.
Oh, okay. There
So
you
I'm right. Okay. By the time Herod Agrippa comes along, the proconsuls really have most of the control over the area.
Okay.
You know, King Herod had a lot of control, and that's the other thing, was they had different standing armies. They allowed the Jewish people to have a standing army. Remember, that's who really arrests Jesus, is the temple guards.
Right.
They're the Jewish military. And you have the Roman military, you know, and they're kind of fighting amongst one another, seeking power. It's all a power play at this point.
Which one was the lesser?
Antipas.
Antipas, where is he? I'm trying to
The
say.
direct line to the right.
Yeah,
Second column.
second column, about halfway down.
Yeah.
Herod Antipas.
He's the lesser.
Yes. Only because, well, King Herod the Great sometimes is called great because of all the building that he did, really unified the country. Herod the Lesser doesn't have, he has a third of the country what his father had. He isn't as significant a builder, doesn't do very much. So I think that's how he gets the name. But it's also like Junior, Bubba. We'd say today Herod Bubba.
Here's Bubba.
Is that good?
Well, I just said, for instance, under Drusilla,
Yeah.
I need to clean my glasses. It looks like it says, he that cries, Paul, no, wait a minute, crying,
Right.
it looks like an S. And I'm gonna say, wait a minute, where do we?
Well, I wanted to give this to you so you can get an overview of how we're moving from one century into the next.
I have a question.
And this is going to cause problems. Yeah.
Salome,
Solomon.
for the hand of John the Baptist, what does that mean in hand?
Okay. The question was Salome dances for the head of John the Baptist. She is the stepdaughter of King Herod, and King Herod has arrested John the Baptizer, thrown him in jail. He's kind of Millie Mouse. He doesn't want to do anything. He's kind of afraid. He feels that maybe John the Baptist is a true prophet. I don't want to do anything to him. You know, maybe I'll get God's wrath on me. So he kind of throws him in prison, and the mother doesn't like that because John the Baptist was talking about how she left the brother to marry the other brother, you know, and she gets her daughter. She puts her daughter up to do a very, we would probably say, erotic dance for the king, and he promises her whatever she wants, and he says, I want John the Baptist's head on a platter, and he gives it to her. That's in the scriptures.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't lose face.
He couldn't lose face, and he promised her, and I think
Even though he wasn't the king and he could have said, oh.
and can I be politically incorrect? An old man and a good-looking woman, and she got her way, you know?
And he promised in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah, promised it in front of a bunch of people. He wasn't going to go back on it. Good point. Good point. Okay, I'm not going to get to the book of Maccabees today.
This is good.
That clock is too fast. Can you set that back 20 minutes for me? Okay.
We'll have to sit that one back too.
Well, it really is fast. It's 5 minutes to ask, but, right? I have 10 too.
Everybody needs to go to.
Yeah, we need to go to church. Okay, can we close with a word of prayer and our benediction? Heavenly Father, we thank you for the history that we're learning and learning more about how the New Testament all came about and how Jesus proclaimed his word to those people. Lord, just open our hearts and minds to understand what your will is. We ask this in the most precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Receive the benediction of our Lord. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Amen.